Shia LaBeouf, he's brandishing a knife. It's Shia LaBeouf, lurking in the shadows. Hollywood superstar Shia LaBeouf, living in the woods. Shia LaBeouf, killing for sport. Shia LaBeouf, eating all the bodies. Actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf.
Now it's dark, and you seem to have lost him. But you're hopelessly lost yourself. Stranded with a murderer, you creep silently through the underbrush. Aha! In the distance, a small cottage
got a little
with a
Vincent
light
Price
on.
thing going on.
Yeah, the little
You move
thriller.
stealthily
Yeah.
toward it, but
Love
your
it.
leg, it's caught in a bear trap.
Gnawing off your leg. Quiet. Living to the cottage. Quiet.
Wow, it's. I guess Shia LaBeouf has done enough public damage that he warrants this kind of song. He's
Rachel Maddow with chin whiskers.
amassed enough of a record. We just talked about his racist rant at a Savannah Police Department. I assume that since he's a Trump resistance leader, that Hollywood will rally around this young man to get him the help that he needs for his hate.
Well, it's
and
gonna
maybe do another parody song.
Him and Kid Rock, Senator, baby. Run off.
I don't think so. And he's not from Michigan. All right, we got to get serious. Go back to the adult world. Let Shia deal with his problems. And to help us do that, we're joined by our friend, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney in Manhattan and contributing editor at National Review, nationalreview.com. He's Andy McCarthy. Andy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
And so your piece, your most recent piece on Trump and Russia and the story dominating this week, you write, the question is not whether collusion is a crime. You're kind of not particularly compelled by the relatively dismal reviews and conversations happening on cable news channels. So you write, the question is not whether collusion is a crime. It's whether collusion is a high crime or misdemeanor. And if that's the question, what's the answer?
Well, at the moment, it's not. Obviously, there's an investigation, and it'll go forward, and we'll see. But my point is that in our system, and that's why I find the banter on the news channels so difficult to tolerate. In our system, when there's an issue of executive misconduct, the question is whether the executive, in this case the president, should be removed from power because he's not fit to wield the power that we trusted him with. Our system is not geared such that when there's an issue of executive misconduct, the remedy is to indict somebody or find a crime and indict it in court. And when you're talking about high crimes and misdemeanors, they're not. The question whether they violate penal law statutes is completely secondary and unnecessary. The only high crimes and misdemeanors are what Hamilton called the misconduct of public men. They're abuses of power, abuses of the public trust, and that's the sort of thing that they go to. It's almost a concept that goes more toward the military justice system, where you have concepts like conduct unbecoming and dereliction of duty, than criminal law concept where you're talking about penal statutes like I used to try to enforce when I was a prosecutor.
Well, so, but what about on the investigative side? Holman Jenkins in the Wall Street Journal writes in response to Frank Rich's piece in the New York Magazine, Watching the Downfall of a Presidency in Real Time. Jenkins writes that Frank Rich's typical left comparison to Nixon, to that, Jenkins writes, the relevant text here isn't Watergate memoirs, Mr. Rich consults, but 3 felonies a day by Boston civil rights lawyer Harvey Silverglate, who says the government can always find something on anyone. It was Nixon himself, Mr. Rich tells us, who said it's not a crime, it's the cover-up. But it would be even truer to say it's the investigation. The existence or non-existence of an investigation is almost an exogenous factor on its own. Does he have a point about that and, Mueller's investigative team?
Yeah, that's why I was against there being a special prosecutor in the first place, and I was really against there being a special prosecutor the way one was appointed, which was outside the regulations of the Justice Department. The Justice Department regulations require there to be a crime to be investigated that the Justice Department, for some reason or other, has a conflict of interest and can't do itself, and therefore needs somebody who's semi-independent to come in and look at it. To my mind, what happened here, again and again, we were told that this investigation is a counterintelligence investigation. Counterintelligence investigation is not a criminal investigation. The point of it is not to build a criminal case. It's to collect information on a foreign power. So to have a prosecutor in a counterintelligence investigation under circumstances where in the Justice Department that normally doesn't happen, counterintelligence is agent work, not lawyer work, to me was not a good idea because there's no limiting principle on it. There's no limit really in any sensible way to Mueller's jurisdiction. And we've seen what happens with these special prosecutor type investigations over the years. Generally, they start in one place and they finish at someplace 7 steps away, often not having anything to do with the thing that they were originally brought in to investigate.
Well, right.
And everybody in the administration has to lawyer up. You know, they're trying to make policy, and instead they're worried about their criminal defense.
Well, and right. And so the Democrats now, because of this Trump Jr. meeting, it seems to me, see an opportunity to level up, to go after Trump Jr. Now you've got, again, with their smoking gun of intent to collude, even if it was unsuccessful. And so
we don't know that it was unsuccessful.
Well, okay.
Who says it was unsuccessful?
Okay, yeah.
Trump Jr.
Right.
Trump Jr. says it was unsuccessful, right? What did he say between Saturday, Sunday, Monday, when the story changed 3 times? Everything he said about it turned out not to be true. So
well, right, and we don't know what the Democrats are alleging is true either. We don't know what Goldstone alleged in that email was true, or what Trump Jr. understood about it, or much less Kushner and Manafort, who haven't spoken at all on the topic. So okay, right. so I mean,
they did it to themselves.
No, I mean, I take your point, but I mean, in terms of Democrats pursuing this, and now Mueller looking at the emails and going wherever that goes. This is the approach, because there's no there still with respect to the principal, President Trump, but they can use, just as they've talked so much about Carter Page and Roger Stone and Paul Manafort, trying to use associates, including perhaps children of Trump, to get to Trump, right?
But that's the theory of first of all, the Trump campaign was working for Trump. The contacts here were between Trump Jr. and people in Russia who are associated with Trump's business partner in Russia. That's Trump. And the theory of our government is that the president, in whom all constitutional power is vested, is the head of the executive branch and is accountable for everything his subordinates do. Now, I complained about this throughout the Obama administration, that every time something happened, Obama would objectify it like it had nothing to do with him, and it was just this or that person in his administration.
Right.
That's not the way the system's supposed to work. The way the system's supposed to work is the president is accountable for what his subordinates do.
Now, Andy, I agree with you, by the way, but I was reading through your article, and like you, I'm reluctantly in the position of almost kind of defending the position and let's see what happened and all of that. However, I remember during the time when Hillary, and I hate to be one of these people that says, oh, well, look what they did and we should do. I'm not doing that. But I'm asking you as a prosecutor a question. And that question is, when Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State and Bill Clinton took money from someone involved with a company called Uranium One, and a decision later comes out by the Secretary of State that benefits that company, why was that just but a news story on obscure sites and not something that was at the forefront? See, I don't want my country sold out by any party.
But see, I totally agree with that. The media suppressed that story, and of course it wasn't investigated because Obama was running the Justice Department. They weren't going to investigate Hillary and the State Department, right? But what I have suggested, and this goes against the general rubric of, or under the general rubric of impeachment, if we're going to talk about it, is a political remedy, not a legal one, which means you take all of these things into account. I think they ought to have a special counsel to look into all of this leaking that's gone on and the potential that the Obama administration was involved in political spying. We don't know that yet, but that ought to be looked into, just like this other stuff ought to be looked into. And Congress ought to be having some hearings about what happened with this Uranium One thing, because if Trump's conduct vis-a-vis Russia is going to be evaluated, I think it's got to be evaluated within the context of other things that we've tolerated with respect to our politicians and our government and the Russian regime. This shouldn't be looked at in a vacuum. I completely agree with that.
And so then part of this specific story with Trump Jr. and the email chain and the meeting that took place, part of that in a couple of iterations now is a question as to whether this was an attempt to actually set up Trump Jr., not to lobby him to get to his dad. You had a spokesman for Trump's legal team suggest that she could have been essentially tied up with Fusion GPS, which produced that opposition research dossier on Trump. And then there's the story out today that several former liberal Democrats, including former California Congressman Ron Dellums, were on this Russian attorney's payroll as lobbyists. And so, that's part of this look into as well, isn't it?
Well, Dan, I've thought from the beginning that it was preposterous to think that Putin's goal here was that Trump win and Clinton lose. I think what Putin's goal always is, Putin hates the United States no matter who the president is.
Right.
And his goal is to destabilize our country and paralyze it and make it unable to pursue its interests in the world, particularly to the extent they compete with Russia's. And as far as that's concerned, by the way, he's succeeding to a fare thee well, right? But I think what happened here, likely that we're going to find out ultimately, is that what Putin was trying to do was set up the Trump people and have something to hold over them. And they fell for it. I think they shouldn't have had this meeting, because simply by having it, you give Putin something to hold over you. Plus, in the event that they did take any information or use it, and we don't know whether that happened or not, they also give Putin a chip to play, so that when Trump, ratchets up some policy or other that could be damaging to Russia, Putin has methods or means to, try to squeeze Trump in the other direction. I think that's what's basically gone on here. I think Putin's an old-time KGB guy, and he knew he was dealing with a bunch of political novices, and he tried to hook them in a way that he'd have something to hold over on them, and they may have fallen for it.
Yeah. I think that's a plausible read at minimum. All right, he is Andy McCarthy, former chief assistant U.S. attorney in Manhattan, now contributing editor for National Review, nationalreview.com. Always worth reading his stuff. Andy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a great weekend.
You too. And he joined us on the turnkey.pro answer line.
It's new.